Wait, you're here for this tutorial. Come on. Alright, so let's start this tutorial by showing you this vintage tablecloth that I bought from my vintage thrift store for $10. This is beautiful. It's 100% linen and it's imported from Ireland. First off, the first thing I do is iron. You want it nice and flat to lay down in your table so you don't have any wrinkles. If you have a few like this, it's totally fine because right now I'm just going to fold it in half. I'm going to fold the cloth in half and I'm going to place my pattern. This pattern is from Right Side Patterns. You've probably saw it in my last video, my last tutorial, my halter top. I'm going to link it right here in the pop-up. Make sure to check it out and check out Right Side Patterns because as you know, I do not like making patterns, and so this makes it so much easier to just go ahead and quickly get started on these projects. So what I do first is I take my pattern and I trace it on top of my fabric, which is the back side of the fabric. You don't want it in the front, you want to draw it in the back side, if you were ever wondering that. And then I also use a small grid ruler because it is a small pattern. It makes it also easier just to add my seam allowance, which is 0.5. The pattern already has it, but I want it to be a little bit more longer. So let me give you a backstory as you see me add the seam allowance. I recorded a video about my sustainable terms. Again, here's the link. And one of you guys commented like, hey, your cute top. So here it is. This is the tutorial. And once I'm done drawing my pattern, I take these little clips, they're my favorite ever, and just hold it intact so I can go ahead and start cutting with my scissor. The whole idea behind clipping the fabric is so it makes it easier for it to stay in half and equal, because normally whenever I just have the fabric hanging by itself as I cut on a fold, it normally moves and it makes it difficult for then the other half to stay even. So just by clipping it just makes it so much more easier for me to go ahead and cut. And the leftover, I have a scrap pile, so you can take a basket or a bag, anything that's easy for you, like a tote bag, and keep your scraps there because then they can turn into a new project, and this way you're not throwing your scraps into the landfill. So then after I cut this first part, I'm going to do the same thing with my lining, and the lining I'm going to keep almost like a backside. So I love the idea of being able to have it reversible, so the lining is gonna have like a cool pattern to it. So then once you're done cutting the lining and the front just in the same manner, you're gonna move on to the scraps. And again, so the scraps, here's the thing, I'm not really sharing the measurements or the pattern in itself because again, the pattern comes from Right Side Patterns, but I'm pretty much showing you just how I do it, the process and the tips along in this video, so then when you go and download their pattern, you can have a reference to how to go about it in a visual way. And so when you cut your straps you're gonna have 4 small ones and then 2 long ones that you're going to want to fold and iron. So when you fold like a quarter of it in one side and another quarter of it in the other side, and then you iron. So you see how it has like this small gap? That's what you want to see, because next up you're going to fold it in half and then iron again. A lot of ironing is done throughout the process because the more you iron, the better finish you have. And so I go ahead and press. So pressing, whenever you hear this term press in sewing videos, it just means to iron. And when I iron, I then go ahead and add these other clips, and like these clips are magical, so I'm gonna link them down in the description. They're my favorite item when it comes to sewing because I always pinch myself whenever I use pins. So this is a safety hazard for anyone that's like me and clumsy that pins themselves all the time. The next step is to do the same thing with the long straps. These are going to be the ones that are going to tie the top in the back, and it's pretty much the same process. The only difference is then you're going to want to fold it again in this manner, and you're going to want to clip because then you're going to go to the sewing machine and top stitch finish just this way. You want it to have this nice clean finish. You want to like sew very close to the edge of that strap just so it can have like this finish and it looks better. And if you're wondering about the stitch length, it's a size 4, and I'm going in a slow speed. Sometimes I go fast, but like I'm going slow just to like take my time. So you're gonna move on to the assembling. But before you assemble, I do want to point out that I did add these darts, and my trick with darts is that once I sew the darts, I cut it in half, not all the way but a little bit, just so once I iron it down, it has a nice flat finish. So now to assemble, you're going to want to lay down your top portion and facing you, like the front facing you, and then you're going to want to lay down the small straps that you did right here. Okay, so there is a sign, like a math behind how far you want it. I eyeball it just to be honest, and then I add my clips, place it down, and next up I take the lining. So I have the front of the lining facing the front, so as you see the back is facing you, and then I'm going to take the clips and clip it again on top, so then the straps don't fall off when I sew, because I'm going to sew but I'm not going to sew here. Like I'm going to leave the opening in the bottom, so then you can open it up. You can turn it around. So I'm just sewing on the sides and on the top. Yours is going to look like this, and I did cut the corners just to have that nice crispy edge and corner to it. Then you see where you can't sew the bottom? That's why. And then if you saw my last how to use a sewing machine, one of the tips that I show you is how safety pins are your bestie when it comes to getting those nice crisp points. And lastly, I iron before I go and sew the bottom. I recommend that you iron as well, because again, like ironing is another of your besties when it comes to sewing. Like ironing brings sparkles and finds and gives you the nice finish, clean that you want. And then lastly, I sewed in the bottom just to close the top, and now I am showing you how to move the straps. So now I'm just showing you how I am inserting the straps in, and it's pretty much like the left side of the left wait, I gotta say that again. So the left strap is going to go on the right one here, then you go in left, and then on the right you go from right, left, right, if that makes sense. And then you're gonna have it finished like this, the finished result. Vámonos. It smells like geese poop. Thank you again so much for your support. Like, please go check out Right Side Patterns, and I really hope that you've enjoyed today's episode of Upcycle with me. Please come again, like the video, subscribe, share it, follow me on Instagram so you can get more up to date on my upcycling journey, my low waist lifestyle, and that's also a journey. And I just hope that you have a shining day.